More than other manufacturers and races, the Vanduul ships are really material driven. Over the time we've been working on this game, the Vanduul race and Vanduul ships art style changed a few times. We believe we found something really good and interesting that really spoke to everyone on the team with the Kingship interior rework, and we decided last year to apply that style and those visuals to the rest of the Vanduul fleet.
By creating the Vanduul material library, we started looking into types of surface and large-scale pen textures. We often create a test room to bring in the materials and look at them in certain light conditions, and we put it on simple geometry like spheres and cylinders, and to have the parallax occlusion mapping visible and see how it deforms on a material. And this is a very helpful way to look at the materials before we apply it on the ships.
So if you think about any creepy crawlies, any deep sea creatures, any kinda slimy, horror-esque stuff, that's kinda what we're going for in our references, and that's what kinda all started with, again, Frank's Kingship interior. He used that a lot, and it just all started from there. Looking at the Blade is a light fighter of the Vanduul fleet, so obviously making it look slick and nimble and lightly armored was the big objective on this ship. The main difference really between the Squadron Blade and the Blade is the cockpit area. Some of you might know that the Vanduul, the way they sit in the cockpit is sort of like we sit on the bikes. This is kinda where this bird of prey look of the ship comes into play, which naturally, if you're looking mostly down and forward, the way you want to approach your prey is from above. So that's why the ship has the most armor on the areas where, on the top of the ship where pilot doesn't look, and it's slightly armored at the bottom where he's kinda heading and he doesn't have to worry about. This is probably what defined the art style of all the Vanduul ships that if you look closely you will see. It's this beetle situation. Nice hard shell at the top, soft, busy high frequency areas on the bottom, and the cockpit that looks not like a human technology at all. So if it comes to Vandal Weapons, the Vanduul create their weapons sort of like the rest of their technology, which is they scavenge what they can from battlefields and from other races, however else they can find the components they need. One of the issues on the old Scythe was that the weapons were part of the ship. This is something we wanted to definitely resolve on the new one. Visual aspects of the ship is we did like asymmetry a lot. That definitely has to stay. It's fairly iconic, but we wanted to make sure the ship looks much more balanced than it was before. And we also wanted to give it those kind of medium fighter characteristics, which is it has armor plating, looks a little bit slower than the faster nimble ships, but it's definitely looks like it can do better maneuvers than a heavier ship for the Vanduul and other races. If it comes to Clave, we wanted to use this opportunity to give it a unique look, so it doesn't look like a Scythe with extra wing on the other side. Also, we wanted to make it look special, so it looks similar to other ships, but in its own right, fairly unique. We like the bird of kind of prey, aggressive silhouette and look. We kind of wanted to emphasize on that a little bit more, which also suited the art style of Vanduul, especially when looking at the other ships. The smaller Vanduul ships definitely have this bird of prey kind of look to them. this is a bit of a peek into what we've created for Vanduul, for Squadron 42, which was a very exciting task for me, and working with Frank on developing this and with Nate, our art director, that was incredibly rewarding, and I hope you like what we came up with, and see you in the verse.
The ships of the Vanduul are just some of the ways we've been celebrating Alien Week all week, from contests to language primers, from recipes to historical fun facts to roundtable Q&As and more. Be sure that you've checked out the website to see everything that's happened this week. As for your weekly dose of currently in development updates, it's time once again for a Sprint Report. Let's start things off with some combat AI improvements that are underway. What you're seeing here is a new reload test using current behaviors available in the game. Now, players don't have unlimited ammo, so why should NPCs? The setup here is that this NPC starts with a limited amount of clips, and then automatically reloads as they empty each one. But eventually, we'll have individual behaviors here that will distinguish between the various NPC characters. But also, never mind the invulnerability here. They turn that on special for me because I'm, as one designer put it, not good. Now when they run out of clips, the NPC will then query the area for an ammo usable, and then move to refill before returning back to combat behavior. It's a little thing, but when combined with the dozens of other small touches like this, these behaviors should lead to a more immersive and ultimately more rewarding gameplay experience for Squadron 42 and the Persistent Universe alike. In ship news, eagle-eyed citizens may have spotted the Origin 100 series being added to the public roadmap for Alpha 311. So here's a look at the current gray box process. Now, gray box is the intermediate phase between white box and final art, where the initial geometry is created, structure is formed, and we get the first real sense of shape language for the ship or vehicle. Now once it's all validated here, the ship will move on to final art, where the texture and detail are added and its true personality will begin to shine through. Of course, it's not just new ships that are on the way though. Old stalwarts like the Gladius, often a test bed for new features and functionality, is currently having a little work done, including the addition of a weapon and item rack to help with missions in Squadron 42, as well as a dash makeover complete with working toggle switches and lights to support the upcoming Cockpit interactions functionality. Now while the weapons rack should make its way to players in the upcoming Alpha 310, we're going to be learning more about the new Cockpit interactions feature next quarter, so keep an eye out for that. Over this quarter, we've been following along with the early development of our upcoming Refinery Decks, and we're here now with another look at current white box, gray box look dev. The Refinery Decks are meant to occupy a separate space within the rest stops from the more commercial areas. These are where players come to handle their more industrial needs, from refining mined materials to picking up mining related missions or even buying new mining equipment. One of the larger elements of these locations are the blazing heat generated from the open smelting facilities and blazing slag being poured into vats. Refinery decks are intended to be utterly industrial, from the large metal clanging to the shouts of the workers all around. And if that's not hot enough for you, on our last sprint report, we showcased the early explorations of fire propagation tests for Star Citizen and Squadron 42, and we're back with another update. Now after starting with voxels, the VFX team is now laying the groundwork for a functional entity-based prototype that can track things like temperature, fuel amount, fire and smoke intensity per entity, and incorporate those into systemic propagation. What you're seeing here now is a fire volume that starts at the ignition point and grows from there, using entities that allow for mesh spawning, which will then in turn allow fire and smoke particles to spawn directly from the surface of an item's geometry. The team's next step is allowing propagation from voxels to entities and vice versa. But honestly, this still just kind of looks like a pyromaniac's paradise to me. Speaking of pyromaniacs, and what might be the best or worst segue I've made all season, it's time for another look at early work on the planets of the Pyro system, in this case, Pyro 2. Now, in the original galactic guide for the Pyro system, Pyro 2 was said to be a coreless planet that once held significant mineral deposits and became the victim of a metal rush that quickly picked the planet clean, leaving it little more than an empty husk. And, well, we may have to revisit that assessment before all is said and done. Similar to our look at Pyro 1 last month, this is early work on the planet's surface alone, so you can expect plenty of changes and improvements along the way before it gets plopped into the Pyro system with its family of other planets. But it's fun to showcase what Planetech V4 can cook up in a new world's very early days. So what did we learn about this week? Well, we learned that the Vanduul and their ships get more alien and more menacing as development progresses, that the Gladius remains testbed for the coolest new features, and that between refineries, fire propagation, and the Pyro system, Star Citizen's development really seems to be heating up. And I have no shame. For Inside Star Citizen, I'm Jared Huckabee. We'll see you next week.